I know that many of my friends are intrepid travelers. I am not that daring. I think I feel more comfortable in my safe and secure home. But some of you have traveled far and wide and you've had wonderful experiences. Some of you may have even traveled to the Holy Land and have walked down the streets where Jesus has walked. Possibly you've traveled to Jerusalem, to Bethlehem, to Bethany, and many cities that hold such significance as far as biblical times and stories are concerned. But that's because now it's relatively safer to travel. Now, this next song, O Little Town of Bethlehem, chosen by my dear friend Beth, has a rather sad history. Phillips Brooks was a minister of the Holy Trinity Church in Philadelphia, and in the 1800s, tourism was at its height because you had these new inventions, these huge ships that could take people across the ocean and take them to far-flung lands. And so a lot of Americans were beginning to travel to the Holy Land to, I guess, see for themselves where Jesus had walked and immerse themselves in experiences which would otherwise not be theirs if they sat home and read the Bible. And so Phillips Brooks, like many of his fellow Americans, also traveled to the Holy Land. He visited Bethlehem in 1865. It was an interesting experience because travel at that time was very dangerous, especially in the Holy Land. Wars and upheaval meant that travelers put their lives at risk when they traveled. Unfortunately, not all travelers came home safely. In fact, some of Phillips Brooks' very close friends and extended family members came to a very sad end when robbers attacked them, and some of them ended up being murdered. So Brooks did not have a very, very good experience. Nonetheless, he was brave enough to take a journey which included a horseback ride from Jerusalem to Bethlehem on a Christmas Eve. And as he traveled that path, he was so impressed by what he experienced, because he realized that he was making a very similar journey to the journey that had been made hundreds of years ago. And he felt a presence that was undeniable. Of course, even though Bethlehem at the time was not as bustling as it is today, it was definitely much more active than when Jesus was born. Nevertheless, as Brooks traveled that road, he could only think back on how the shepherds would have felt that very first Christmas Eve as the angels announced to them the birth of the Savior. And so, even though he had some very bad experiences in the Holy Land, this journey remained with him. And so when he returned home, this giant of a man, and he was a giant not just because he was 6 feet 8 inches tall, but because he was a stalwart in biblical studies. And though he was so well educated, he loved people, both young and old. In fact, they say that his office had all these toys for children. And so when he sat down one day, he remembered his journey on horseback, and he wrote this song especially for the little children in his church. O Little Town of Bethlehem has long been a carol that has brought peace, comfort, and assurance to many. So thank you, Beth, for choosing this song. Let's sing it together. O Little Town of Bethlehem.
Above the
shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. For Christ is born of Mary and gathered all above. While mortals sleep, the angels keep their watch of wondering love. Oh, morning stars together proclaim the holy birth, and praises sing to God our King, and peace to men on earth. How silently the wondrous gift is given. So God imparts to human hearts the blessings of his head. No year may hear his coming, but in this world of sin, where meek souls will receive him still, the dear Christ enters in. O holy child of Bethlehem, descend to us, we pray. Cast out our sin and enter in. Be born in us today. We hear the Christmas angels, the great glad tidings tell. Oh, come to us, abide with us, O Lord Emmanuel, O Lord Emmanuel, God with us. He came to that lowly town of Bethlehem, a town that didn't have much significance, but that's just it. God chooses not the great and the mighty things of the world, but those who are weak, those who need him, and he touches our lives. I hope we remember that. I hope that brings us comfort and solace and hope. God bless and take care.